thank you, Assembly Member, and thank you all for being out on a cold morning like today. But this is a great conversation. I heard the Assembly Member talking about critical things that are impacting our community. Somebody just told me, the young man here told me about how it is in the subway. He works in the subway, and the kind of crisis, the mental health crisis, post-pandemic mental health crisis, right? Why? In many ways, well, if you lost your dad, your mom, your grandmother, your grandfather, right? And let's be clear, we lost a lot of people in our district, not just because of the virus, but because of their own health conditions, right? Diabetes, respiratory problems, cardiovascular problems, renal problems. That's what took us out, disproportionately, right? But if you lost your mom or dad, or if you lost your grandfather, your grandmother, your son, your daughter, a lot of young people, I know a guy that runs the hardware store right next to my office on 181st Street, lost his 27-year-old son. You know, imagine that, right? If you lost them and you couldn't be there with them, and you had to be like on Facebook watching that loved one transition, that gotta have an impact on anybody, right? On anybody, right? If you were in the hospital fighting for your life in a ventilator for a month, 2 months, whatever, you know, that's gotta have an impact on your mental conditions. And so there is a mental health crisis post-pandemic that has aggravated itself to a level never seen before. In addition to that, right, you have a fentanyl problem. Now, I've been around long enough to remember the crack years, right? Yes. Crack almost took this city down, right? Crack was such a vicious, aggressive, and cheap and accessible drug that kids were hooked up on crack and they would go and steal their parents' TV and sell it in the corner. They would go into their mom's pocketbook and take, you know, the food money. Yep. And it just like hit home the way nothing else had hit before. This is just the same, if not worse. A little kid died in the Bronx part of the district because in the daycare they were storing fentanyl. He didn't even come to direct contact with the drug. It was underneath the play mats. And the little kid and 3 others wounded up in the hospital. He died. It was like a year and some months. And so this is a drug, I don't need to tell you, just walk around. And so there is a neighborhood, right? I would say from 116th Street, I would go as far down of maybe 116th Street to 155th Street that has been redlined, right, for the provision of services for people with mental health issues and addiction issues, right? Now, 75% of the people that come to get those services, right, are from outside this community, right? So the city, you could be living in Brooklyn and you come to your methadone program on 126th Street. You could be living in, I don't know, Queens, and you come, and so the neighborhood doesn't have the infrastructure, right, and the know-how, right, because this is a health crisis. First, the fentanyl crisis is a health crisis, and the mental health crisis is also a health crisis. We're not a hospital, we're a community, right, and we don't have the ability to be able to deal with this issue. So let me give you some of the scenarios that pop up. So a superintendent, very graphic, and I'm sorry that I'll be so early in the morning as graphic as this. A superintendent will tell me, listen, Congressman, I clean up the lobby and then somebody comes in and urinates or does something else in your buildings, right? If I catch them, there's going to be hell to pay. That's a concern. I got to talk to the police, say, look, we got to try to avoid this situation. I see people in between cars just like that. At 12 noon, I seen them with my very own eyes, injecting themselves, right? That's a concern for the neighborhood, but for that person too that should have a dignified setting to deal with his or her addiction. I happen to think that the hospitals have looked the other way. They should be doing more because they're the ones that have the know-how. They're the ones that have their tools to provide that kind of service. Not you, you're the community. I mean, we do the best we can, so we'll carry our load. We will carry our load because we're not saying that we shouldn't. And we're sensitive to everybody that has those needs. But we're not going to carry more than we should. The rest of the city has to pick up their own share. So I'm fighting for that, right? I'm saying let's give them the service. Let's get the institutions in. Let's get all levels of government in. But have Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue and Park Slopes and Tribeca and everybody else carry their own load too. That's what I'm saying. Right, so we're working on that. And I'm working with the governor on that. I'm working with some of the institutions in the neighborhood so that we can relieve these neighborhoods that are richly embedded in families and people that have been around for decades, right? We relieve them of the pressure that they're facing every day. Now, on top of that, you throw in Ward's Island and Randall's Island with the migrants. I understand there was a stabbing there last night or yesterday. It's a perfect storm. And our neighborhoods cannot shoulder that by themselves. We need other neighborhoods, other parts of the city to come in and what was redlining with the banks back in the 70s and 80s when his former boss, Denny Farrell, led the efforts against, as chair of the banking committee. I've been around. Chair of the banking committee, he led the efforts against banking redlining, which meant that they would draw a red line and say, we're not investing in that neighborhood. Yep. Well, now there's another type of redlining, and they're saying, any issue, any service that has to be given, let's dump it there. No. We won't put up with that. So I need your help in coming together to address this crisis that, as I said earlier, is a deep crisis of mental health services because of the pandemic and what went on there, and then also an addiction crisis that's showing up in all of our corners and is literally showing up in our living room with our family members. So I want to be helpful, work with the assembly member and the state senator and all the local leaders to ensure that we address these issues with you. Where's Sean? Sean is right here from my office. We're on 125th Street in the state office building. If you have any other issues, housing issues, immigration issues, or you just want to complain, because I'm in the business of hearing the complaints. It's like my daughter. My daughter's like across the street one day, and it's noisy and trucks are going by, and she's yelling something at me. I said, "What? I can't hear you." And she keeps on yelling. I said, "I can't hear you." And then finally I said, "Money, right?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." So I knew that was right. So I'm in the business of hearing complaints and trying to address them. Every once in a while, I want some love too. Give me a little love. But. You could say that tie looks good on you, Espaillat, nice smile, nice smile. You like my coat?
I like this.
I like your bow tie. Okay, right here. Right here.
So I love how you always say it how it is. And I love how you talked about when the crack happened, we were able to see through the congressional hearings, right, about the trickle down. Like, the cocaine and the crack wasn't happening. Uzis weren't made in Harlem, you know what I'm saying? The trickle down. Do you have an opinion about how this stuff is trickling down? The federal government, things like that. What do you?
Very much so. Let me answer this question first. You're going to hear on TV that immigrants are bringing in fentanyl. That's a lie. Even the Cato Institute, which is a right-wing conservative think tank, has concluded that the vast majority of the fentanyl is coming through the ports of entry via vehicles, trucks, cars. It's being organized in a very traditional way, and is coming through our ports of entry. So if we want to address that, let's not build a wall. Let's upgrade our ports of entry with the kind of technology that we have available that could be able to detect fentanyl coming in through the border. Once that happens, once it comes through the border, we don't cultivate cocaine on 155th Street and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. We don't have poppy fields on 145th Street. We don't have that. Nor do we control the ports. We don't control the ports, but our neighborhoods are the recipient of all of that. And so, when you hear border security, the first thing I say is ports of entry, because that's where all the drugs are coming in, and they land right in this neighborhood. It's no mom. A mom that comes to the border, listen to this. This is important, you ladies that are here, because no one knows more about everything than moms. A woman has 3 kids, including a 13-year-old. She may have had a 17-year-old that was killed by a gang back in Guatemala. She now has a 13-year-old that's being recruited by that same vicious gang. She decides to pick up her 3 kids, including the 13-year-old, and walk 2,000 miles right through the Panamanian jungle, El Darién. And all kinds of stuff happens in that crossing. To come to the border, knock on the door, and say, "Let me in. I want to save my kids." Now, I guarantee you, I may not know a bunch of things, but I know this. That woman, if she's given the chance, will not be late to work. She will not be late. Minimum. She's not going to miss work because she got the sniffles. The economy needs them. The economy needs them. The economy needs people that are willing to do jobs that we're not willing to do. Okay? We see it every day when someone comes in a bike and delivers our food from the local grocery or restaurant. So it's not foreign to us. You see, I have issues with them coming up the wrong side of the street, but that's another topic. So let's give her a shot. Don't let other people pin us against each other. Don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. Because a mom right here in the neighborhood is struggling with her 3 kids because she's not getting enough and the system is not being responsive to her. But that mom just walked 2,000 miles to save their lives. So, I'm just bringing that up because a lot is being said to answer your question about fentanyl and who's bringing it in. And it's not the migrant. I don't think the migrants are criminals per se either. I don't know anybody else that have any papers that's going to wake up one morning and say, well, let me think how it is that I'm going to break the law today so I can get arrested and deported back. No, they're going to say, I'm not messing with the law. I'm going to try to be within the parameters of the law. Thank you. Right, who's next? Right here. And then one more.
There's one that says Hochul wants to close up to 5 New York prisons. Once she closes those prisons and the money comes in, how are we going to rezone those prisons into housing?
Well, I'll give you an example. We have the Edgecombe Correctional Facility. If she closes that one down, what I propose is that should be turned into a senior village. Why? Because seniors live on fixed income. And they're getting hurt right now because the cost of living has gone up, food has gone up, and they live on fixed income. So that has a pretty big footprint, and you could have maybe 600-700 units there for seniors, right? So I will take it, sort of like site at a time. But that one right there, I will call for a senior village. We need it in our community.
Yes.
Right here, where is he?
You had a question over there?
He's on the phone. Speak up, speak up.
One was about the housing situation. I sit on the board there for a couple of buildings in the area, and one of the things that happened is we do have some low-income housing buildings in the area, but we're having every day with people who are trying to take them from us, so that they can then do what they want to do. So they attack the boards, they're attacking us, and all those who are trying to keep the income, the housing low and affordable for the people in the area. But then we have to fight with powerful companies like Wave Press, Management, Catch, Joe NYC, all these different people who are trying to come after our buildings, and all of those who are trying to hold the low-income housing in the area.
Is this a tilt? Is this a tilt building or HDAC? Well, if you invite me to the building, I'll go. I mean, each building has like a different dynamic. Some buildings, for example, the landlords want the tenant out, so they deny services to the degree that people say, I'm getting the hell out of here. I can't keep my family here. Others challenge the tenancy of, let's say, a son or daughter that is inherited the apartment, maybe went away to college but came back. They'll challenge that. That's a holdover proceeding, right? I'm not a lawyer, but my father always told me I should have gone to law school. He was right. I was wrong. So, each building has a different dynamic, right? And if you invite me to yours, my team will go with me to see how we could help.
One more. You get one. Which are the two?
Domestic violence.
Yeah.
I'm a father, and I had a daughter that went through a domestic violence issue. She was beaten very badly, right? The person was caught and let right out after he beat her nearly to death, fractured her face, knocked her out 3 times, blacked her out, really bit her ear off. You understand what I'm saying? And when we went to housing and we told them about the situation, and we said she needs a transfer, he needs a gates on the window, because he climbed up the fire escape and came in through the window. And she lived all the way on the 4th floor. They said, we don't do those things, and we don't have to. That's not our responsibility.
Well, first of all, I feel you as a dad, right? I haven't had that experience, but I can just imagine how you feel how you feel when your daughter is on the victim side of the domestic violence. Yeah, So, first, zero tolerance, right? Zero tolerance. Second of all, a victim should be notified immediately when the person is released that was the perpetrator, right? The aggressor. Because, they come out of there and there's a level of rage. And they're coming right back to the scene of the crime. That's what they're coming back to. Third of all, the DA should be, and I know for a fact that housing, the top tier for housing availability is when someone is a victim of domestic violence like your daughter. So the DA should be working with you. My office will help you in that, in trying to get her relocated somewhere away from, not next to you, because the aggressor will know that your daughter will go back to like the safety net, right? The area where she feels, which is right next to you, the dad, right? No, somewhere where she will be protected and will be sort of like away from all of this. And again, zero tolerance, the stiffest. It takes also, I think that men, we need to have a discussion among ourselves.
Yes.
We need to have a discussion among ourselves. Because it's not just women talking about it, it's really us talking about our behavior, right? And what we can do to change that, right? And the kind of pressures that are out there, first of all, there's no reason for it. There's a lot of excuses for it. You know, alcohol, you know, well, if you get drunk, you know, lock yourself up in the bathroom, you know. Don't go ahead and beat up your woman, you know. And there's a bunch of reasons why there's a whole body of evidence and science behind domestic violence. I worked on domestic violence programs before, you know, and in fact, you know, one of my cases, the woman was there with a bandana, and I said, what did he do to you? And she took off the bandana, he cut off both her ears. You know, so that's how vicious it is, right? It's vicious. And so we need zero tolerance, warning systems for the victims to be able to protect themselves, and then relocation to an area where they will be safe.
All right,
Right
we
here.
have one more question left, and it's this young lady over
Okay.
here. Yes.
Go ahead. I'll get you privately.
I just want to know, how do you keep Mitchell mamas accountable for making sure that like heat and hot water are, you know,
Okay.
regularly, especially these months? I live in a hot garden, and in my
Where do you live?
Espaillat. We've been out of heat. My mother lives in one building. I live in another. I have a 4-year-old. We've been out of heat and hot water for a week. I'm in building 3. My mom is in building 6, and it's been a few months now that they've been battling with that. And the water has been like yellowish brown. I've had it. I'm tested by New York City EPA. It came back with lead in it, in my apartment, in my building, and I'm sure it's all, you know, within the plumbing system. I have a 4-year-old. I'm going to repeat that, right? That we've been living 2nd floor.
So it's not even sometimes the hot water issue is a height issue, but it's not even that. Again, you know, we can go, Al is an expert on Esplanade, although he can't pronounce the name. But, you know, his office is right there.
I know.
I will be willing to work with him to see what's going on. Let me tell you what my experience has been with Michelamas. You know, the books, right? We used to have a fellow that was a CPA that used to work very closely with us that would order their books, because very often they try to get an increase in rent per room based on what they call was their needs. And the same thing happens with the management of the building. But when we audited the books, we will find out that the increase were bogus, and we will go to court and actually beat them several times on the increase. The same happens with services, because services are directly connected to the finances of the building, right? Services are connected to how you're running the building, right? And how you run the building has to do a lot with the finances of the building. So we got to take a look at each of those aspects to figure out, you know, what's leading to a heat and hot water complaint, which is what you're bringing up. But I'll work with the assemblyman. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. Amen. Thank you.